I am a huge Jurassic Park fan, and I just read Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park, the novel. Have you read this novel? It's flippin' amazing. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler talk book review for Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park. I read the Jurassic Park novel once a long time ago. I was either in high school or college, but it was a long time ago because I just love Jurassic Park. It's just it is like my favorite movie of all time. So I got a hold of the novel and I read it, but it's been so long I couldn't remember anything. And then my mom and sister, they came out for my birthday and they got me this. It's this 2-volume set. It's got Jurassic Park and it has The Lost World. I mean, look how cool this thing is. This is so cool. Anyway, so it was awesome to get this book. And I just finished the Jurassic Park novel. I'm gonna dive into it, spoilers and all, so if you want some spoilers, let's do this. So I read this novel in like 3 days. By this novel, I mean Jurassic Park. I did not read this whole thick thing in like 3 days. But just the first one, Jurassic Park, I got it done in 3 days. I absolutely could not put it down. It was just really cool to read Michael Crichton's vision and how he started this world and what inspired the movies. And it helps I'm such a mega fan of Jurassic Park and, you know, have that movie just so solid in my head. But as I'm reading the book, like, there are so many fascinating story elements that I just thought were amazing that were different than the film. Now, the film should be untouchable. I think Jurassic Park, the film, is perfect as it is. Because if they took Michael Crichton's novel and word for word translated that to the screen, it would be a rated R gore fest and borderline horror film with some of the things that Michael Crichton does with these dinosaurs. But I loved reading it that way in the novel, and I love having my movie the way it is. But one of the things that I liked that was slightly different than the movie was the storyline of man's pride. Now, at its base, it's the same as the movie. You know, they believe all the dinosaurs are female, they can't breed out in the wild, and they boast of all of this control that they have. But novels can do things different than movies, and they can get into people's thoughts and intents and feelings and things like that really well. And so Michael Crichton does a great job doing that with this novel, because as he's digging into their pride, they think they're so untouchable that they've created a computer program system. And what this computer does is it counts the dinosaurs. And it does this through like these monitors and motion sensor things and cameras all out in the park. And so this thing is so state of the art that it counts the dinosaurs. And it's so state of the art, what they've told the computer to do is only look for 235 animals. Because there could be no more than that unless the scientists create a new animal and put it in there. I think 235 is the right number. I think they believe they had 235 separate dinosaurs on the island, like 15 species. But either way, we'll just use the number for this example, whether it's right or wrong. So they believe there were 235 animals, so they told the computer, only look for 235. If it drops under 235, an animal has gotten out of its cage somewhere, has gotten out of its pen, and therefore an alert gets triggered. But it will never count higher than 235 because they are so full of themselves that they've created their own little blind spot over here. So they won't even dare to look over here because there's no way it could increase. So in the book, when they go on the tour like they do in the movie where the car's with no drivers and it kind of just goes and whatever, instead of a sick Triceratops, it's a sick Stegosaurus in the book. So Grant gets out and Ellie, you know, does her doctor thing looking at the Stegosaurus. But Grant, being a paleontologist, notices Velociraptor eggs. This is his life. So when he looks at a Velociraptor egg, he knows what he's seeing. So he picks up this egg and he's like, they're breeding in the wild. This is a Velociraptor egg. And so they use the radio and they call back to the control room. They talk about these Velociraptor eggs, and the control room is blindsided by this. They're like, what? It's all females out there. That's impossible. There is no way that you have found Velociraptor eggs there. So Ian Malcolm, in his cocky attitude, picks up the walkie-talkie, calls the control room, and he's like, hey there, let's just do a little science experiment and humor me, because, you know, according to you, I'm wrong. So instead of telling the computer to look for 235 dinosaurs, tell it to look for 300. So they went, okay, fine, we'll humor you. They told the computer, look for 300 dinosaurs. It found 300 dinosaurs. There were 300. There was not 235. They had like double the amount of velociraptors. That's the part that scared them the most. Double the velociraptors, but just throughout each of the pens, as they're counting the 15 species, like some of them the same number. Like there was 2 Tyrannosaurus Rexes. Yeah, there's 2 in this book. You have the adult Rex and you have little Rex Jr. So you have 2 T-Rexes in this. So all those numbers stayed the same, but the velociraptors had doubled. And now there's velociraptor eggs outside of the velociraptor pen. And there's no problem with the park yet. Dennis Nedry hasn't betrayed everybody. He hasn't turned off the fences. And so it really plays with the pride of man in that in their pride, they willfully blinded themselves and said, we're only going to look for this number. Anything drops below it, that's cool. Let an alarm go off. Anything above it, well, that can't happen. Well, it happened. The other thing that was really interesting is this novel opens the way the Lost World movie opens, with that girl on the beach and the little green compies, those little things, and they're like jumping on her and all that stuff. That's the opening of the novel. And what makes it more interesting to have it be the opener of the first novel is it's showing, here are these guys from the beginning, they think they have all this control, but they don't. They have no control, because the compies, that was not the main Jurassic Park island. No, this was like the mainland or some other island, but it was not the island of the dinosaurs. So from the beginning of the novel, we get the idea dinosaurs are already getting off this island somehow. They've already found ways off the island, and they're already spreading, and the compies have attacked this little girl, and in this place where the compies are attacking them on the mainland, it was one story and a number of stories of babies being bit by weird lizards that walk upright. And so, like, these weird lizard stories are spreading, and they are spreading everywhere. And so that was an incredibly interesting storyline to illustrate the fact that they firmly believed they had all of this control. But from the very beginning of the novel, they truly had no control. So I found it interesting the way Michael Crichton was illustrating that, and the way that he put that in the book, and the way he wrote it in the novel. It was such a fascinating concept to me. There were certain characters that were done differently in the novel than in the movie, and so I thought that was really interesting. Like, first off, Tim and Lex. So in the movie, Lex is the older one, and she's the computer nerd, and Tim is the dinosaur nerd, and he's the younger one. But in the book, Tim is the older one, and Tim is the computer nerd and the dinosaur nerd. Lex is like 8 or 9 years old. She's like a little kid, and, you know, she's a tomboy. I mean, she's got her baseball glove and her baseball, and I mean, she thinks her brother's a nerd, and like all that stuff. So it provided some excellent comedic relief, like places where Lex sees a baby triceratops and she names it Ralph, and, you know, she, you know, starts petting a baby velociraptor. I forget what she named it, but she finds these little baby dinosaurs, and they attach to her because she's so sweet, as she gives them names. So there's cute little Lex moments where she's kind of a comedic relief in a very tense book. But then all of a sudden you have a moment where she sneezes and it wakes up the T-Rex, and they get chased by a Tyrannosaurus Rex. God, she's so freaking annoying. So to one hand, she's like the comedic relief. On the other hand, she's the child that sneezes at the most inopportune time, and then the dinosaurs find them. And so it's very interesting the way they played with those characters. Another character choice that's interesting is Gennaro. You remember him from the movie because he got eaten off the toilet. Like, that's his most memorable thing. He gets eaten off the toilet by the Rex. In the movie, he's a skeezy lawyer who you want to get eaten. In the book, however, he is also a skeezy lawyer who's not paying attention to Hammond. He's taking care of Hammond's affairs. He knows there's dinosaurs on the island, and he's done what was needed to be done so InGen could get the money and incorporate and create these dinosaurs. So he's kind of blindly done this stuff like a moron without asking too many questions because he just wanted the money. So he's definitely got the wormy traits that he had in the film. But in the novel, he's slightly different. Number one, he survives. He makes it the whole way through and does not die. And he has a lot of wormy moments, but I think he's got a few heroic moments in the book as he's traveling through the island. He goes with the game warden Muldoon. Instead of Ellie and Muldoon, like when the raptors were coming, he's like, "It's all right, run." And Ellie runs, and, you know, he's hunting the raptors that are really hunting him. So it's Muldoon and Gennaro together, and so it's kind of an interesting pairing. And so there's a couple areas where it's like Gennaro mans up, and then a lot of areas where he just cowers right back. And so he's kind of an interesting character for me in the book. The third character I want to talk about is John Hammond. In the film, he is very naive and makes very stupid choices, but he's got a heart of gold. So, stupid choice, for example, he invites Tim and Lex to the island. But the heart of gold is, that's his grandchildren, and their parents are getting a divorce. So he wants them to have a fun weekend with the magic of dinosaurs. So, stupid choice, but a golden heart. John Hammond in the novel is just greedy and evil to the core. In fact, I just can't stand the character in the novel. He's so freaking evil. The reason he brings Tim and Lex to the island in the novel, it's so that Gennaro and the other people that are there to, you know, look at the island, so that they would see the wonder in the kids' eyes. He brought his grandchildren. The parents are still going through a divorce, but he brought them as a ploy, so that nobody would close down the island and they would go, oh, I get your vision, Hammond. I get it. See, Hammond, he wanted to patent the dinosaur DNA to make as much money as possible off of it. And he actually did own the patent of the dino DNA that brought the dinosaurs back to life. He owns the freaking patent on it. And so he is greedy to the core. He is like one of the worst types of people, and he's so irritating in the book, and he dies in the book. Whereas the movie, he lives, he dies in the novel. It's like towards the end, he rolls down this hill and he breaks his ankle. And as he's trying to climb back up the hill and he's limping and he's old and he can't do it, the compies, they're like scavengers, so they attack him and eat him, and they're poisonous. They bite you, it releases a poison, and you kind of get all relaxed and euphoric, so he just kind of falls asleep as they're eating him alive. But he's such an annoying, stereotypical, greedy dude throughout the book that by the time he's getting eaten, you're like, oh, good. I don't even feel bad for the kids, because I don't even think the kids notice this guy a lot, because I don't think they like him so much. So it's like, anyway, so it's very interesting, the similarities and the differences in the characters. The next really huge thing that's really different in the novel than in the movie that I want to talk about is Grant kind of has this mission going on. So right before the power goes out, so you know in the movie, they're at the T-Rex pen, the power goes out, T-Rex breaks out, rips apart the cars. One of my favorite scenes in the movie. But what kind of takes that and makes it even more intense is the fact that right before that happens, right before the power goes out and they stop in front of the T-Rex pen, Grant is sitting in the car, and the car ahead of them, the radio's connected to cars so they can hear what's going on in each car. The kids are like, what's that on the boat? What's that on the boat? So Grant pulls out his binoculars and looks at the boat that's leaving the island and heading towards the mainland, and he sees 3 raptors on the boat. So even before the fences are down, again, we emphasize they really had no control, and freaking smart as anything else, velociraptors are on the freaking boat. They caught the boat and they're heading to the mainland. So Grant has this side mission of, I gotta get to the visitor center, the control room, as fast as possible and tell them what I saw so they can call that boat back. And he's like, okay, I got 12 hours. Then the power goes out. Then Baby Rex gets out of the cage and runs across the street. Then the T-Rex breaks through the fence and starts ripping apart the cars, which, side note, I love how they did it in the movie. It's perfect, because it's hard to do what's written in the book. The book, it takes it from the perspective of the kids when the T-Rex is ripping the car apart. That the kids, when the T-Rex is stomping down on the car, they hear the claws scraping against the metal. They hear the metal crunching, the glass breaking. The T-Rex, like, puts its tongue in the car looking for the kids, and it describes how putrid it smelled, and the smell of death and rot that is in the breath of the T-Rex. And then the T-Rex with its powerful jaws lifts up the car and throws it in a tree. Lex had already fallen out, but Tim was in there. But as it's describing it, this is those scenes where it felt like a horror novel to me, because from the kids' perspective, they can't see everything the Rex is doing. So from their perspective, the ceiling is coming down on them. The crazy sounds, the horrible smells, the awful roar of the Rex as it's frustrated because it saw the park tour guide that was in the car with the kids get out and run for the woods. So it knows there's something about this car. And so it's coming to this car and it can't find the meat. It's like when you have a crab and you're eating crab and you're trying to break apart the legs and you can't get the meat. You just get so frustrated you throw the crab leg down and you're done. Like, I mean, that's like what it felt like to me when I was reading this portion of the novel. But the way it describes it from the kid's perspective adds so much intensity and so much fear. And the park tour guide that was in the car with the kids, he ran, and it's interesting as the book dives into it, he ran because he's seen enough of his friends and coworkers eaten by these dinosaurs, he didn't want to be next. So he runs into the woods, but the Baby Rex is in the woods. The Baby Rex got out, the Baby Rex is in the woods, and the Baby Rex finds this guy and starts to play with him, like it pushes him in the mud. The guy gets up and goes, leave me alone! The Rex pushes him back in the mud. This happens several times over, like he gets up, Rex pushes him. He gets up, Rex pushes him. He gets up, the Rex eats him. Yeah. Eventually, finally, Baby Rex ate the guy. And so what he was trying to avoid, he ended up getting. And so it's interesting the way it dives into that. And then it dives into the logic of, okay, so Alan and the kids, they could have followed the road back to the visitor center. It would have been a more direct path. But then there's the Baby Rex. They didn't know where the Big Rex went after it was done tearing apart the cars. But then the Baby Rex comes up and then they run into the park because they got to get away from the Baby Rex. And you still have Alan Grant's side quest. He has now, 11 and a half hours to get to the control room and call back the boat. But they've just been attacked by a wreck, so they're really tired. So they go into this utility shed that's in the woods, and they fall asleep in the utility shed. And he only meant to close his eyes for like an hour, and he wakes up 8 flippin' hours later. He has lost 8 hours of time to call back the boat. So they get out of the utility shed to go on the next part of their adventure, and Tim says, look, a river. Hey, look, we can blow up one of those emergency rafts. And they're like, yes! They get to the rafts, and the T-Rex is asleep by the riverbank, just snoring. And so Alan, he gets the raft blown up as quietly as possible. He gets the kids on the little raft. They get in the river, and Lex sneezes. And the T-Rex wakes up. And they're like, oh, well, we're in the water, so we should be fine. Boom, the Rex gets in the water and swims at them like a crocodile, and they were helpless to stop it until baby Rex shows up and then claims the prey of the big Rex that was right there on the bay as its own, and the big Rex is like, what? No, I got that! So he leaves the kids and Grant alone and chases the baby Rex away, and so like, it's like a close call, but it's such an incredibly intense scene. And as they go down the river, they go through the aviary and face the pterodactyls and all that stuff. All the while, I'm reading this, and all of that is intense all by itself, but I'm like, Alan, look at your watch. How long was that Rex attack? How long was the pterodactyl attack? How much time do you have left to get in there and call the boat back? So the idea that Grant had to call this boat back added so much to the intensity of all the scenes that were going on, because he's got a mission. We got to turn the boat around before the raptors reach the mainland. And so it just added this whole intense covering. It was such an intense thing. Speaking of intense, if I could say that 50 more times, last but never least, I have to talk about the raptors, because the way Michael Crichton described them and their intelligence, it's just freaky. I mean, the movie did a great job portraying it, and they've done a good job, I think, portraying the raptors as it's going on, but man, nothing quite reaches what Michael Crichton described in the books. And it's not just their intelligence, it's the way Michael Crichton described all the scenes with them. I mean, for instance, you know the kitchen scene in Jurassic Park, where Lex and Tim are in the kitchen and they're trying to hide from the 2 raptors that are in there. Well, in the novel, it's just 1 raptor, but the power's out, so the kitchen's pitch black. So Lex, being a little girl, wants flippin' ice cream. Grant's out trying to get the power back on. They're there alone because it's supposed to be the safest place. And so Tim's trying to get her ice cream. He's got his night vision goggles still. So he's walking in a pitch black room, guiding Lex through it, wearing his night vision goggles, looking for ice cream. And then they hear a hiss. And in the pitch darkness, there is a raptor in the kitchen with them. And the fact that it's pitch dark adds so much to it. It adds so much that Lex can't see it, but she can hear it, and the fear that she's feeling. You have Tim, who's the only one that can really see in the room, and he sees where the raptor is, so he's trying to lay out frozen steaks to lead the raptor into the giant freezer to save him and his sister. And he's trying to do it in such a way that he doesn't make a noise so that the raptor can pinpoint exactly where he is and go for him. And then it's the same thing like going on outside. You have Ellie, who's trying to distract the raptors. You know, she's on one side of the fence, they're on the other. She's trying to distract the raptors so that they could accomplish something. But in reality, the raptors are playing with her, trying to distract her so that the raptors that have climbed up a tree and are on the roof of the building can dive down and eat the people that are there. And so here the humans are thinking they're being clever and they're distracting the raptors, but the raptors are like, oh, cool. So I can hold your attention too. Two can play at this game, and that describes the whole island as volcanic. And so a lot of times there's a mist that just kind of remains over the island. So the mist is kind of its own character with, you know, the silhouettes of the raptors in the mist. You can't see where they are. Boom, there it is. And like, oh my, I don't even know how much more to describe it. Like, it's one of those things you just have to read yourself. The way Michael Crichton wrote it and used the environment, the intelligence of the animals, and their coordinated attacks. It was just absolutely incredible. There's so much more I could talk about. There's so much more that I can say. But you know what? As much as this has been a spoiler talk, I do want to leave something for you if you haven't read the novel. I highly recommend it. I'm giving this novel an A+. I flippin' loved it. It took me like 2 or 3 days to read it. I absolutely could not put it down. Have you read Michael Crichton's novel, Jurassic Park? If so, let's talk about it in the comments and let me know what you thought about it. I'm really excited because I got my second volume here, The Lost World, and I just started reading it. I'm only like 2 chapters in, so I'm excited to get through the rest of The Lost World and talk about that too. But right now, Jurassic Park, A+. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified when I drop another theological analysis, movie review, book review, ranking video, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.